Hi, I'm Blossom Johnston, the founder of Idaho Partners for Good. And this is a seminar with the data from our newest report titled Voices from the Field, Reimagining Giving in a Shifting Landscape. Last week, an article was published by Stephanie Beasley in the Chronicle of Philanthropy regarding national foundations shifting their funding strategies. It's one of about a dozen articles that I've read in the past 6 months forecasting the impacts of federal government cuts. But what about Idaho? Are we different? This report helps inform that. Thank you to the foundation leaders who let us learn from them. Their candid conversations inform the recommendations in this report. We are deeply grateful to each leader for sharing their time and insights, helping us better understand how to align our resources with the efforts that drive the most meaningful impact. In the past 3 months, Idaho Partners for Good initiated a series of listening sessions with philanthropic foundation leaders across Idaho and the broader Pacific Northwest. Why? Because we were hearing from nonprofits that things had gotten really tenuous. Lots of fear, lots of uncertainty. We wanted to better understand how external pressures, including political polarization, economic uncertainty, and government funding cuts, are shaping the giving strategies of philanthropic foundations who fund in Idaho. The purpose was threefold. One, understand how external pressures are shaping philanthropy. Two, aligned with the nonprofit needs and realities. And three, to identify opportunities for bold collaborative action. So, who were the participants of this report? Well, there were 13 leaders from 11 small, medium, and large foundations, some local, others regional, and a few national foundations who collectively steward more than 148 million in annual grant making. Footnote, not all of that 148 million is in Idaho because we do have regional foundations that we interviewed. This equates to roughly 1/4 of what is provided annually through federal grants. In this report, we protect individual anonymity so leaders would feel comfortable sharing their honest opinions. Interview questions were designed to, one, understand how external pressures are shaping the priorities of foundations, two, their pain points and or urgent concerns, three, whether there was a sense of urgency to fund differently, four, if they were exploring any strategic adjustments or experiments, five, their level of caution or desire for innovation, six, their appetite for collaboration, and seven, who they go to for insight and support. A recent report from the Urban Institute indicated that Idaho nonprofits receive about 643 million annually from government funding sources. According to their report, it directly affects the grant funding of 477 Idaho nonprofits. Another footnote. We know that this is an underestimate because it doesn't include reimbursements, contracted services, or funding to nonprofits that file the 990EZ form. Foundation leaders reported that they're seeing 2 to 4 times the volume of funding requests. There is a reality check in this. Even if philanthropy wanted to cover this gap, they would have to give away more than 4 times what they do now. This gap highlights the scale of this challenge and the need for systemic solutions rather than expecting philanthropy alone to absorb the shortfall. This quote on the slide is from Una Osili with the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of volatility, especially in financial markets. When you're not sure exactly what's happening and the news is changing, that sometimes leads to donors just being uncertain and not acting. Uncertainty can dampen giving. Maybe you've heard the quote from Albert Einstein, in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. Well, we are in the middle of difficulty and therefore are looking for the opportunity. We're at a perfect inflection point to take stock of what we invest in and how because there is positive sentiment, according to what we found in the data, toward innovation and relevance. We know the government system of support for people has changed. The needs in Idaho have grown along with our population, and foundation leaders are rethinking their role. Our interviews revealed tensions for foundation leaders, including the quote on this slide. Some of these shortfalls are going to kill people. This is the reality of what these leaders are thinking about. It's a huge weight, one they are not taking lightly. While pain points and urgent concerns varied from respondent to respondent, there is a general uncertainty about the future of our political, cultural, and funding landscapes. There's a perceived harm to the national giving infrastructure as a result of government cuts, and a growing recognition that philanthropy alone cannot fill the funding gap left by government cuts. The tension was palpable when discussing the tone and tenor of our political and cultural landscapes. Leaders told stories about struggling with whether or not to remain politically neutral, and if so, at what cost. These leaders know they can't fill the gap, but a larger philosophical question exists regarding whether they should. So, what's behind the crisis? Well, we already know that nonprofits are overwhelmed. We hear that pretty much daily. Um, and so are foundations. That's what we found out. Foundations are also feeling overwhelmed. Nonprofits that we've been in contact with are feeling overwhelmed. They're working off alternative, much smaller budgets, and they're coming to us for help with their funding shortfalls. Many foundation leaders we interview also talked about their own capacity constraints. They acknowledge staff or those in their networks are overwhelmed, yet they are open to strategic, responsive grant making. Both sides of this philanthropic coin are struggling with their operations capacity. There is a general consensus around foundations for nonprofits to collaborate, but we want to call out that to do this, we need to fund the capacity building, which, by the way, a number of few respondents that we interviewed do have capacity building funding built into their model of grant making. We want to also point out that the lack of funds is magnifying an already negative environment of competition between nonprofits. It's unhealthy, and it's really comes at a not a great time when we want to increase trust between nonprofit leaders so that they can move forward in new ways. On the philanthropy side, many funders are open to collaboration but lack the infrastructure to support it. So this quote is from one of our participants, and it says, in challenging times, we need nonprofits, people, to think differently about their work. There isn't enough money to fund every nonprofit individually, but we could fund a collaborative. So the methods we used to analyze the data for this report were keyword analysis, theme identification, and sentiment findings. We also paired human analysis with AI. Once the data was analyzed, we went out, we researched best and promising practices to substantiate these recommendations. Remember, going back to the first slide, the purpose of these interviews was to, one, understand how external pressures are shaping philanthropy right now. Two, align giving with the needs and the realities of the nonprofits in Idaho. And three, identify opportunities for bold collaborative action. These 7 recommendations are designed to bridge current sector disconnects, respond to emerging needs, and position funders for greater collective impact during this time of volatility and transition. There's also a bias toward action. The growing sense of responsibility and urgency as public funding retracts has philanthropic foundations setting aside time, or with the need for foundations to set aside time to consider how these broader external pressures might need to shape their current and future priorities. So almost everyone we spoke to said that They need time to prioritize and think strategically, which is a big part of what's not happening right now because of the need to respond. So that was the number one. Number two is to strengthen cross-sector convening. We would love to be part of that solution because we do play a neutral role in this sector, both as funder and getting into the trenches with the nonprofits. So, number three is develop and distribute capacity infrastructure tools. So, if you didn't know this, the artificial lid on top of most nonprofits is their operations and infrastructure. If they have the capacity to serve more, it is usually because there are funders who are helping to fund their capacity. So we need more infrastructure tools to build that capacity. Number four is to equip foundations with tools to understand what's happening on the front lines of our nonprofits. Number five is to design a shared impact language across sectors. Right now, there's a big disconnect between the philanthropy and the nonprofit when it comes to shared impact. Number six is to offer collaborative giving spaces and or places for philanthropy to learn together, to problem solve together, to identify things that might be great things for them to work on together. Seven is support storytelling and impact communication across the philanthropic sector. So, this quote comes from one of our participants, and one of the questions we asked was define effective philanthropy. And to them, this meant enabling community champions, the person that gets things done, especially in rural communities. So, this report is supposed to serve as a roadmap of what's possible, but we also want it to be an invitation to foundations to work with us, to lead boldly, to fund differently, to create lasting systemic impact in Idaho, especially now when things are starting to get even dicier. Our hope is that we can reimagine what's possible together in the shifting landscape that we're all operating in. This and the next slide are ideas that we could co-design together. This particular recommendation leverages Idaho Partners for Good and our neutral position. We have lots of trusted relationships. We could serve as convener. We could convene philanthropy or cross-sector with funders, government, civic leaders. We could focus convenings on specific themes, like what might the future of Idaho philanthropy look like if we did this together? Or pilot new collaborative business models, facilitate and fund mergers, look at co-ops, other solutions that would uh, continue to deliver the services, but just in new business models. Then many foundation leaders expressed a desire for safe, nonpartisan spaces to engage. Well, these gatherings could focus on those kinds of topics. We could use it for sparking new ideas. We could surface shared priorities. We could accelerate coordinated action. Foundations really should lead by modeling collaboration themselves and using their influence and credibility to catalyze solutions that no single one of us can achieve alone. This is the second idea, recommendation, just as a starting place, uh, because because of the adverse conditions, we can allow that adversity to force clarity. We can let it help refocus our efforts, and we can really allow it for honest reckoning. In other words, sit in this place together to go, what is our role? How do we move forward? So we know that conditions like this often precede innovation. Well, if foundations want better data, which they said they do, they also said they want closer relationships with grantees, and they want to invest in long-term solutions. Let's innovate. We could use Idaho Partners for Good's research and practitioner lens to co-create a more aligned and equitable framework that measures the right things that both foundations and nonprofits can use. Any framework that we design must ensure that success is measured not only by the scale or efficiencies, but more importantly, by how deeply and sustainably communities are being served. Well, we want you to meet our latest transformational leadership cohort. They just completed their leadership journey with us. These leaders are from all generations because the future of Idaho nonprofits and the communities they serve will be shaped by what we do now. With significant federal funding cuts and the change in the tax structure for foundations on the horizon, we could play a more strategic role in guiding and leveraging resources to these sectors. Idaho Partners for Good has a role to play, and we're ready to help lead, but can't do it alone. Let's co-create a partnership rooted in bold leadership, shared learning, and community resilience. We'll work with you to design deliverables that speak to your board, align with your values, and help grow your impact. Let's partner to reimagine giving, restore impact, and rebuild systems that serve all Idahoans. We all know behind every strong Idaho community are strong nonprofits, which include our churches, our food banks, our housing agencies, our education, and so much more. We can find ways to preserve what Idahoans need, but it'll have to be together. This report and a companion white paper titled When the Safety Net Phrase will be shared out widely. We plan on sending out a press kit on August 15th with the report and the white paper. Then on August 26th, we ask you to join us again for a public discussion about this report and potential next steps with our nonprofit friends and others. Please join us in developing stronger, healthier, better equipped nonprofits so they can do more of what they do best.